Today, Ryan and I have a preview for a game called KALYPSO. This is the next one from Inside Up Games. It is a tile-laying game of layers set in kind of a, I guess you could probably say that it's a post-apocalyptic world, kind of along the lines of Waterworld.
But a happy one. Happy Waterworld.
But not quite as violent. Certainly not violent at all. This is a nice sort of like rebuilding, trying to make our way in the world when it's covered in water.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically creating a flotilla here. And
Yes.
David mentioned the dual layer, which we've seen maybe one or two times in some other games, but it's done here in a really cool way, where you're salvaging trash kind of out of the ocean, and trash comes in a wide different amount of varieties, and you're taking that trash in the form of tiles, placing them on your board, and when you've built your nice trash foundation, then you get to build your buildings on top of that. So that's the stacking element there.
And the thing is you don't have to build the entire foundation. You just have to build little pieces and parts that can support these buildings that we're going to build on top of them. And there are, you see 4 different colors, but each one of those has 2 different types of buildings that can be built based on how you're orienting those tiles so that they're supported appropriately with the right color of resources underneath them. And of course, those buildings are going to trigger actions that you can take, abilities, bonuses that can spill into building more buildings. So you can have turns where you're going to build a building, do another building, you get a survivor, place that survivor, re-trigger another building. So the turns can actually kind of blow up and be very, very satisfying. But like we said, we have it set up here. And what you see here is each player board. Now, it should be noted, we have this set up in a competitive mode.
That's true.
That is what we're going to be focusing on during this preview, but the game has a cooperative mode that is actually pretty robust and significantly different enough to the fact where you're going to actually take all the player boards and put them together in one big board. And it turns into a pretty thinky, puzzly game for cooperative play. But like I said, we're going to stay with competitive. So each player has a player board at the beginning of the game that's going to start out empty, save some of these life preservers that go in certain places, and some of these barrel tokens that are on the side that show them half submerged. These are things you're going to try to grab throughout the game to get survivors, to get barrels, which count as sort of wild resources as you're building out your settlement.
Yeah, but what you're doing turn to turn, it's actually kind of it's a drafting game. You've got these vortex tiles, and they're actually designed with kind of this felt so that the tiles stick on. Which is actually kind of cool. The board itself has that kind of felt too. So like when you place these foundational tiles down, they don't really move a lot, but it's a drafting game. You're going to replenish these with a bunch of tiles, and then you're going to be kind of taking one and passing it around. And you're going to do that until you've drafted all but one tile off of each one of these vortexes. So it's one of those games where you've got what's in front of you, you've got that information, and you're kind of looking around at the table to see, please don't take that one because I want that one. Because like what David said, you're placing these on your board, and you're trying to kind of match up these different resources, all that different like kind of trash that I was talking about, like the rubber or whatever, on metal pieces, scraps, all of that is on these tiles. And as you're placing them on your board, which basically becomes like a puzzle.
It does.
As you're placing them, you're trying to connect these in such a way that not only do they create a foundation, but so that the types of trash and junk are matched up together, because you need a foundation to have at least 3 of a kind to then build the right building on top of it. So there's definitely puzzly elements at play here.
Yeah, with the goal of building these buildings, you want to effectively have tiles on that first level that create a 2x2 perfect square or more. But what if you've added a tile that does that, and 3 of those 4 squares are all of the same resource, for instance, seaweed. So if they're all green, then I could build immediately one of these buildings. Like I said earlier, the buildings come in 2 different varieties. The green ones, you can have a net workshop, which lets you cast a net from a boat, if you have a boat, or a garden. The greenhouse lets you build a garden on your tiles, which is going to also need to be supported, but it's going to be some end game scoring. All these tiles have a variety of different things. We'll go through some of them in a bit.
As we talk,
but as you build these buildings, you're going to find opportunities to extend your turn, to maybe add more tiles to your board, or potentially even just to put some things on there to get some points at the end of the game.
Yeah, for example, this warehouse tile here actually gives you another tile drawn from the bag. And this is like a T-shaped tile. So if you do this right, when you place this, you'll take another one of these, you'll tuck it somewhere. This might create another building. You can place another building, which might add another piece, which might let you complete another 2x2. And so like you can extend those turns. Like the game is only 4 rounds, and you've got however many, tiles you're drafting off of this vortex. but finding interesting ways to extend your turnout, it's good, it's helpful, but it's not necessarily going to win you the game. It's not necessarily about who has the most buildings out, because there are a variety of different ways you're scoring. And there's things that are going to happen as you're playing the game that are going to kind of maybe even change your goals, or like give you certain things you're wanting to do on your turn that isn't necessarily like building the biggest, flotilla or whatever.
Yeah, let's back up for a second and talk about that. At the beginning of each round, and there are 4 rounds, but at the beginning of each round, one of the things that's going to take place is everyone has these forecast cards. Every player is going to have 7 forecast cards in their hand. And these are going to have both a cooperative and competitive portion of them. But in the competitive game, you're going to choose one of those to give to the player on one of your sides. You're going to go in the same order that you're going to be drafting in. These serve a couple purposes. One, they're going to dangle some opportunities for a person to achieve this thing and get something out of it. But if they don't achieve this thing, then they're going to suffer some sort of penalty, usually at the end of the game in terms of negative points. So for instance, I have one here that says, it's Raindrops Keep Falling is the name of it. It says, assign 1 barrel and 1 garden. So if Ryan gave this to me and I put it above my board in this round slot, I, during this round, am going to have to assign a barrel and a garden. That means a couple things. One, I'm going to have to place a tile that allows me to get a barrel from my board.
The Cooper, the yellow tile.
Yeah. And I'm going to have to put tiles out there so that I can build a garden. And if I build a garden, I can't place that garden on my board for the points that would normally score at the end of the game. I have to assign that garden to this card. If I don't do either of those things by the end of this round, at the end of the game, I'm going to lose 3 victory points. However, if I do that, I get 1 victory point per garden that I have.
Yeah. So yeah, these are carrots that are dangled in front of you. There are other carrots dangled in the form of these notice boards, which are giving you some specific goals for scoring. Basically, everything that you add onto your flotilla here is going to score some points. All of the buildings have some natural points, but these notice boards are going to kind of encourage you to do very specific things, and these are going to change out for every game. So you're not always looking at the same setup between these notice boards and between just the way that these are given to you.
Yeah.
It's going to kind of change what you're doing turn to turn, and it's going to kind of change the strategies that you have available to you.
Yeah, the forecast cards in particular, as well as the notice boards. The notice boards kind of serve as that long-term goal, like Ryan said. These forecasts are not only opportunities, but more often than not, when you're choosing which of those forecast cards you want to give to one of your opponents, you're looking at like, okay, what's their situation? I'll bet they're trying to get this turn. So I'm going to give them this so it forces them to, they have to build 2 boats this turn. Because if they don't build 2 boats, even if that wasn't in their plans, they're going to miss out on this opportunity and potentially score some negative points.
Right. You can kind of see what people are building to. If you're looking at their boards, you can kind of see where they might have some, opportunities to make some of those. You can kind of look and see what people might be doing. And, and in effect, like you're trying to hurt them. Like you're trying to stall them out. Like
yeah, a little
you're
bit.
hoping that they don't do this because you want them to suffer the negative points. In this game, we completed all of them because, I don't know, for me at least as a gamer, you put that in front of me, I'm like, I'm going to move heaven and hell to get this card completed. I'm going to make sure.
For sure.
But there's some situations where you can't, especially these like survivors are a very valuable commodity. You have to like rescue them and find ways to get survivors. And these are, I think, one of the most powerful things in the game. You can build houses, one of the other yellow tiles, and then place these back out onto buildings to reactivate them.
Yeah.
And getting the powers of these buildings, like that's the fun of the game. To me, is like finding the way to like trigger these and then adding things to trigger more things and growing out that way.
Yeah, let's talk as much as we can without doing a how to play about what all these buildings do. We already talked about these. The scrapyard and the warehouse will give you new tiles. The warehouse gives you the T-shaped. The scrapyard lets you take 2 of these little tiles. Now, it should be noted, all the tiles are going to have some combination of those 4 resources, but also this reddish colored one is plastic. Plastic's no good. Plastic doesn't help you do anything, and plastic is going to potentially, at the end of the game, be a tiebreaker. If there's 2 people tied, whoever has the fewest plastic showing on their board will break that tie as one of the tiebreakers. But you're going to take these tiles and immediately add them. Whenever you get tiles, you immediately add them to your board, so it lets you chain those things together. This next one here for metal is either the shipyard or solar panels. The shipyard, when you place it, you're going to get a boat. You take a boat from the general supply. This is the only tile that you're going to get that you're allowed to place anywhere on your board. It doesn't need to be orthogonally adjacent to part of your settlement. Whenever you're adding tiles, generally, it has to be at least on one side, orthogonally touching a tile that you've already placed on that first level. The boat can go anywhere, so you can actually put it way out here in this corner like this to pick up a survivor. Whenever you remove one of these life preservers, you take a survivor, put it next to your board. That's a survivor, like Ryan alluded to, that you could use for a couple other reasons later in the game. The solar panels don't do really anything for you immediately, but they can score you some end game scoring. There's a solar panel right here, and at the end of the game, you're going to get 1 point for every adjacent water space. So, and it's orthogonally adjacent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. You're probably going to get no more than 7 points because it's always got to be connected somehow.
It's got to be connected to the rest of your
but 6 or 7 points is pretty good for the solar panels.
And then the yellow tiles we talked about a little bit. The house lets you place your survivors, assuming that you've collected those life rafts. You can place them in your little flotilla. They go out to work in one of the buildings and trigger that building again. You have a Cooper that gives you a barrel. And then the green ones, one lets you place a garden, which might be one of your goals to collect gardens. And then the nets are really important. This is kind of a two-step thing you have to have. You have to have already built the boat with one of those lighter blue tiles, the metal tiles, and then you place a net out. And this is what lets you catch the fish. Now, fish actually have two different functions in like the regular game versus the cooperative game. In the regular competitive game, you're collecting fish out of this bag, and they're going to give you a variety of things. They're going to give you some points. They might give you some barrels and things like that based on what's on the other side. In the cooperative game, you have to catch a certain number of fish every round to feed everyone that's living there, and that's kind of one of your goals. It's still important in the competitive game, but it's super important in the cooperative game. And they do give you two ways to kind of catch these fish. The nets are one way, but if you ever manage to kind of build a complete circle on your board, like completely
enclosing
an
water
area, you get to collect all the fish in there that way as well. So that gives you a little bit more to think about too when you're building out your spatial puzzle, because you can build this giant circle and just collect all these fish at once, which is really satisfying.
It is very satisfying. It should be noted you can't fish with the nets and collect with the same fish with the enclosure. So there are some little rules there. The nets are really interesting because, as you can see, the board is broken up into all this grid, but the bigger grid has these zones. When you have a boat, when you place it, it's wise to put a boat sort of straddling two zones, because then it can cast a net in one zone and it can also cast a net in the other zone that it's in. Whereas this boat here could only cast one net in this zone and it's only going to catch this one fish.
Yeah. Which also is why the survivors are on the corners, because they want you to have to make that decision.
Exactly. You don't have to cast the net on the fish. The net is literally just a token that signifies that you've cast a net in that zone.
Yeah. So you're going to keep doing that. Like we said, you're going to keep drafting your tiles, adding your tiles, passing the vortex, drafting again. You're going to do this over the course of 4 rounds. So by the end of the game, you'll have 4 of these weather cards in front of your forecast cards that are going to give you potentially scoring. You've got your notice boards that are going to give you scoring. You've got all of your buildings that are going to give you scoring. And we didn't really talk about this too much, but you have these giant monuments that actually require like a 3x3.
A 3x3 and 5 of any one of the resources, which is tough.
It's tough to build these monuments.
You can build that, and you will have foregone building probably one of the other houses by waiting to build a monument. But the monuments are 11 points naturally, and in this game, the monuments were worth an extra 4 points. So it's a significant amount of points for those.
Sure. And if you think like, it's only 4 rounds, but like these are finished boards. Like this is the end of the game. You can see like we did quite a bit over the course of 4 rounds. Like
it was more than
I think.
It was absolutely more than I anticipated when we first started playing. I thought like, okay, we're going to get 4 tiles each round naturally. And there's 4 rounds. That's 12 tiles or 16 tiles. But with all those extra tiles that you can get, you can actually cover quite a bit of the board. So it lends to very satisfying turns. I mean, there are some turns where you build a building and then that allowed you to place another tile, and that let you build another building, maybe one of the houses, and then you activate that and assign one of your survivors to reactivate another building. Like, that's a pretty big turn. And it also should be said, this is all simultaneous. When you draft, you're taking the tile. You're not taking your turn and waiting for the next player. Yeah. Everyone's taking their tile and going. So the game keeps moving quite a bit, even though people can get pretty thinky on their turns.
Yeah, and so that's the competitive mode. We're not going to talk super much, like we said, about the cooperative mode. I mean, the game is the same when you're playing cooperatively. You're kind of playing turn to turn the same, but but you're going to have some goals that you have to complete in order to win. So it's not necessarily about scoring points when you're playing cooperatively. It's about hitting these specific goals. And there's a number of cards, and there's a whole nother side of the board here that is going to be used just when you're playing the cooperative side. And it's quite an interesting, I think, style of gameplay. Like it requires you to have reached a certain kind of metric by the end of each round, or else you just lose.
Yeah, it's vastly different and a unique situation, to play cooperatively. I would almost say it's kind of feels like two games in one.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't really feel like a cooperative mode that's tacked on, nor does it feel like a competitive mode that's tacked on. It really does feel like two unique experiences. I think the cooperative mode, obviously going to be a lot more thinky. I think the cooperative mode, it probably lends itself to being a slightly longer game than the competitive
Sure,
mode.
there's that whole level of discussion that happens
Exactly.
at the
It's like,
table.
what should we do? And you're going to be faced with some puzzly situations where you're like, okay, where can we find that one thing? Oh, there it is. And you find it, but you take some time getting there, which can be satisfying. But that is Calypso. If you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whenever we can. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.